What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday. Today we're going to talk about competition, healthy and unhealthy, and how that has kind of changed in terms of its definition over the years of third party. Meaning competition was one way at one point, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and had a certain type of impact. Now it should be viewed differently. In 2021, it has a different type of impact and the difference between the two. We will get there. It's something I want to talk about, especially with a lot of this stuff coming to light recently with the Springers, my kind of views on that, the difference between bullying and cannibalism, really, and the implications that it has kind of for us as the consumer base across the board. But first, a little bit of house cleaning, not too much. Last week's Sit Down Saturday on the Fans Toys Connection. Reading the comments was very, very interesting, and I will tell you why. When I do videos like that, I have to be careful how I maneuver, because I want to not put any person in jeopardy in my life that has given me information, or has handed me information, or has forwarded me information, so I have to kind of protect my sources, I guess you would say, in a way, right? Of which there are many that play into this conversation. Now, some of that conversation was definitely speculation, and some of it is not. And it was interesting for me to read, for some of you, like, oh, he's really reaching on this part, and it's like, yeah, am I? Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. But either way, glad that most of you seem to enjoy it and at least found some of it interesting. Like I said, not all of it is fact, a fair amount of it is speculation, but some of it is fact, and that's what leads to some of the speculation. There it is. There's somebody that brought up a point in the comments about gigapower and connections to Gundam KOs. I have heard that as well. I haven't mentioned it because I can't verify it, but I have heard that as well. So I'm parking my car in your garage, so to speak. All right, moving on to Star Wars Black Series, the Armorer. I had the tongs in backwards. I'm an idiot. I got no excuse. I have no... I'm sorry. I got it backward. Just wasn't paying complete attention, and I thought it kind of looked cool, I guess. And it looks like she's getting ready to flip a burger instead of maneuver steel that's melting, or Beskar, I suppose. So there you go. Also, the LucasArts. Some people have commented that I'm like missing games. The thing really isn't supposed to be a catalog of all their games. It's more about the evolution of them and the history of them. Sometimes people get a weird expectation of what a video is supposed to be about. But I tried to mention as many as possible and kind of give a little bit of tidbits on them, but it's not like a all-inclusive, like just this, there was this, and then this, and then this. It's kind of about how this, and this changed and had an impact in their career, and where their career went, and where the company went. But that's fine. That's for both videos. And then the collection critique. It was interesting to read those comments as well, and some people are so silly on there. But two things I want to clear up. One is we have nothing against DTOFs. It's just that a DTOF is a right tool for the right job kind of a thing. There are Transformer DTOFs that look good. We've commented on some Transformer DTOFs that look good. However, often we find that they don't look good. Often they look crowded and yet half full at the same time. Secondly, there was a lot of people in those comments, the one collection in particular started a lot of conversation, both positive and negative, the guy that has like all of it. And there were some comments in there that was like, all I want is the toys, I don't care about what they go on. And reading that was kind of like, whatever you want, whatever makes you happy is ultimately the right answer for you. But if you want someone else to look at it, just don't be surprised when they say it looks like you've already said you don't care how it looks. So why would anyone else think it looks good? And why would you not want your stuff to look good? You're investing a lot of time, energy, money, and effort into it. It's not a criticism of you. It's a legit question to you. Like, I'm curious. Why wouldn't you want... Which, like, everything, I take pride in everything I buy. I want it all to look right. It just seems like buying, you know, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars of toys and sitting them on a plastic fold-up chair, just the wrong idea. It's like sitting a Ferrari outside of a shack. I mean, there's nothing technically wrong with it, but maybe get a Civic and get yourself a condo. I don't know. My thoughts on that. And that about does it. So let's get down to business. Okay, so competition and third party, they kind of go hand in hand, right? The history of third parties competing against each other for the kind of consumer base is part of the culture of this thing, right? But there are two types of competition. There's healthy competition and there is unhealthy competition. Let's take a look for just a second at New Age and Magic Square, right? The two major competing companies for third-party legend scale G1 aesthetic Transformers. In the beginning, they were both flourishing and everybody kind of loved what they loved. They loved a little bit of both. There's a difference in sizes slightly, so it kind of appeals to two different markets in a way. way and what you have space for and what you want and logistics and all of those sorts of things, so they had their own niche. This past year, it's gotten a little bit more cutthroat. Megatron versus Megatron, Soundwave versus Soundwave, Seekers versus Seekers. So now they're more going after each other, it seems. That's the difference to me, for one, between healthy and unhealthy. Now, there's more options and more available examples that I could use for that, but I think that that's a good example, right? Where you did have two companies competing for the same shelf space, but not for the same character. It's interesting, right? But third party has a history of that. Sit Down Saturday actually comes from a competition. The very first kind of Sit Down Saturday-esque conversation was a Devastator conversation with Generation Toy Devastator versus Toy World Devastator. I think looking back at it objectively, Toy World kind of won that war. Doesn't mean that there's anything bad about the Generation Toy. In fact, I think it's their best offering to date, combiner-wise, but just the way that it changed the game, right? And then here on Sit Down Saturday, we have covered countless competitions in numerous forms, right? Which Springer to spring for? We're going to come back to that. We did an RC discussion between the Toy World and the MMC and the Rouge, right? Rouge? The Fans Toys one. I chose the Fans Toys one. I'm happy with it. It suits my needs. Looking at them all objectively, to include the Takara, I think the overall best RC is the MMC one. But I think they all do different things well. It's just a matter of what you want for your collection. But I think overall, objective, not my preference. My preference is the Fans Toys one. I'm happy with my choice. But I think that overall, objectively, MMC has the best offering. We covered Omega Supreme here between Gabriel and Fans Toys. And then there was another one that was kind of competing, but only for the price, not for what it was. Both great offerings. I think that's a case where both have kind of gone on to have their own legacy and kind of historic relevance in third party. We had Bruticus competition between Zeta and Unique Toys and MMC. A little late in the game, but MMC as well. All of them brought different stuff to the table. All of them weren't competing for the exact same space in the same way. We have the Minosaur situation, right, which is kind of happening now. We've had countless competitions. There was a Megatron competition, one of the earlier ones. Another one of the earlier ones that springs to mind, so to speak, is the Inferno competition between Make Toys and MMC, and then Takara eventually throwing their hat in the ring. This is nothing new under the sun. This is the kind of way of the game. However, the stakes have changed, right? So if we look back at the Make Toys vs. MMC time of Inferno, there was a lot of different options for third party. You had Make Toys, you had MMC, you had Fans Toys. Fans Project was still around. There was other companies that most people have forgotten about before and after, and I mean, there was so many. People used to talk about back then that the third party bubble would pop, and I think it has, and what we're left with is kind of the remains of it. However, competition has a way of going a lot further during those times because there's a lot more options. Case in point, when you have 10 companies and 3 are competing for the same figure space, there's still 7 other companies producing product. What companies have really lasted the longest without any sort of significant bumps in the road? Planet X, zero competition really. War for Cybertron aesthetic. MMC's reformatted. IDW, no real competition in the Chug scale. Iron Factory, IDW Cybertronian-esque legend scale. No real competition, completely flourishing. And that's not all of the companies, but that is a significant amount of examples of what I'm talking about. And you know what's interesting about the Iron Factory versus New Age conversation? They're not competing for the same space, but they are still competitors. One is producing high-grade legend scale G1 figures. One is producing highly made legend scale IDW/Cybertronian-esque, you might say, representations. But the success of one is probably only motivating the success of the other. The success of one isn't directly hindering the success of another, whereas you might start to see that more with the New Age versus Magic Square conversation in regards to G1 stuff, but not in the same way that we're seeing with Masterpiece. And I want to make it clear, I think competition is healthy. However, we're not in the same space anymore. It's not 2016 anymore. It's 2021, and there's really only MMC, X-Transbots, and Fans Toys that are competing for the G1 Masterpiece scale space. I'd love to see Make Toys return, but as of right now, I'm not really including them. And I think that at times they have that healthy competition as well. I think there was times where even though the Fans Toys versus Make Toys Headmaster thing, I think really was a thing. Fans Toys wasn't making the exact characters that Make Toys were making. And Make Toys presenting high caliber Headmaster figures and Target Master figures, I think was truly inspiring Fans Toys to do the same. Not competing for the same space, competing in the same field. But if we look at these last couple releases, and we'll use RC as a good example, does anyone have all of them? See, I remember the Inferno, and I remember during the time of the Inferno, there were people I knew that had the MMC one, the Make Toys one, and the Takara one. A fair amount of people. I don't think it's there anymore. So now, if they're competing for the same space, it's directly having a hindrance on the other. I have the Fans Toys RC, and I passed on the others. Had that Fans Toys RC not gotten made, I would have had the MMC RC and would have passed on the others. Had the MMC one not been made, I would have been sad. I'd have been very sad that no, it's fine. Which brings us to the meat and potatoes of this conversation, which is the stuff that's going on right now regarding this Springer situation. There were more Springers than you could shake a stick at. This is the beginning of the cannibalistic third-party competition, in my opinion. Unique Toys had one, Fans Toys had one, MMC had one, Open and Play had one, if you want to count that, and X-Transbots said they were going to come with one. It's 5 Springers competing for the same shelf space. All G1 inspired masterpiece scaled Springers competing for the exact same spot. I got one. How many did you get? I'd be very interested to know how many Springers you got. Leave it in the comments. If you bought it and sold it and kept one, that still counts as 2 purchases. And X-Transbots did what I think is arguably the smart move, and they waited. They let the fires burn, and they waited until there was an open play. Not an open end play, mind you. No one waited for that. But they just waited until there was a gap that they could get in when nobody was really competing for that space anymore. Maybe people wanted a Springer and everywhere was sold out. Maybe people wanted a Springer because they just wanted something new. It was a smart move for them. I don't know if it was planned that way or if it happened to be circumstantial, but it was smart. And as soon as they do it, what happens? Fans Toys is coming out with Apache again. MMC is coming out with a different deco of their Springer, and that's where we start to see competition become unhealthy, in my opinion. I'm not an anti-competition guy. If you know me, you know that I'm very competitive. But when the competition makes us all better and strive for more, that's a beautiful thing. When the competition leaves other companies burning in the dust, it's not a beautiful thing, especially at a time where there aren't many people competing anymore. These companies have to start recognizing that competition can be healthy and can be considered competition, especially when you're not going for the exact same market at the exact same time. A higher caliber figure produced by a company should make the other companies raise the stakes of their own product just to compete in the market space, not necessarily for the shelf space. I think there's enough room for everybody to eat, but not everybody can have steak on the same day. Some days he's got to have a steak and you got to have pork chops, and he's got to have a pizza and you got to have pasta for everybody to eat. If you all want steaks on the same day, somebody is going to go hungry, and we don't have the luxury of going hungry anymore because there's not many people eating anymore. I don't know how tactically planned this was on Fans Toys' behalf or MMC's behalf, but it seems very purposeful. And I think the companies need to have a shift in the mindset where there were so many companies at one point that you needed to uppercut to kind of make your way in the game, to make a name for yourself. That's not the case anymore. There's not many companies competing for the same space. And the ones that are competing for the same space are the ones that seem to suffer. When the companies that find their own vibe, find their own lane, and ride it out while staying competitive in the market space with production quality, they're the ones that last. I would be very interested to look at the numbers of MMC's Masterpiece stuff compared to their reformatted stuff. Remember the Dinobot Wars of years ago? How many people really survived that with the expectations of profit margins that they had planned on? I don't know. But I guess the point of this conversation is just to say that competition and the way the third parties see competition and see their competitors and how to compete in the market space needs to evolve. It needs to change. It doesn't need to be as cutthroat anymore. Admire your competitor's product, see what they did right, see what they did wrong, step your game up to compete in that space or be mentioned alongside them. That's how the competition needs to change, in my opinion. This Springer thing is not fun. It may have been fun the first go round because it was different the first go round. Now it's starting to seem ugly, to me anyway. And look, in a worst case scenario, right, if things change and laws change and governments change and all that sort of thing, and there's a huge crackdown on all this stuff, it's a lot harder for them to crack down on 10 to 20 companies than it is if there's only one left. Keep that in mind, third-party companies. There's strength in numbers to this. Anyway, curious to know your thoughts. My peace of mind, I thought it was worth saying. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.